Hi, everyone. We're back with another episode of the Black Lawyers Podcast. Today, we have the pleasure of interviewing lawyer, actor, philanthropist, entrepreneur, just keep going down the list. Hill Harper is joining us today. Hill, how are you?
I am great. Thank you. Great to be on.
Great. So we're going to first just start with a quick hot topic, just some thoughts on some,
Okay.
hot topics that are going on. Hi.
Good
I
morning,
see your son. How are you? Are you joining the podcast today? He's so big now. I can't believe he's that big.
He's big.
For the viewers that are watching us, you can see us with the clips, but obviously a lot of us are just listening into the podcast. So right now there's a huge story going on with ESPN. Maria, she got a slot because there was some audio leaks saying that she had only gotten the job because she's Black. I know that you're obviously out in the media. What are your thoughts about people being out in the media and making these racial comments, and then how it affects their contracts?
I'm always astounded by folks' hubris, and the idea of discounting other people's success based off some measure of race, whereas when they're successful, even if I'm reminded when I went to Brown and Harvard, I would have discussions with people who are from wealthy families who were there because their father went there, their mother went there, or some legacy, and that helped them get admission. And they were there talking about somehow affirmative action. And then I would say, hold on, you are the continual systemic and institutional affirmative action beneficiary.
Yeah.
And that's pretty incredible. Pierce.
Yeah, and the tree for it.
And Pierce is part of our podcast this morning.
Yes, it's okay. Pierce can be a part of the podcast.
So for those of you who aren't watching, Pierce is my 5-year-old son, and he's wonderful. He's brilliant, and he's learning a lot. He's actually learning Mandarin. He goes to a Mandarin immersion school, and
now I'm in first grade.
And now he's going into first grade, and he's very.
Is he going back into school, or is he going to be remote?
Back into school. So he was actually in person in school all last year. Very good situation. And just in terms of, I was very fortunate to find this school that for the most part met almost all year long. So that was really pretty good. And, but to answer your question, I remember having a date with a very well-known Black Harvard Law School professor named Randall Kennedy years ago. And he had said that he was a Rhodes Scholar, amazing. And he had said that he had always felt that his intellect was discounted because people thought that he had just quote unquote gotten the job because he was Black and this. And I said, well, why does that make you upset? And he said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, the people don't think I deserve what I have. And I said, well, why does that make you upset? They're going to think that you don't deserve what you have no matter what, because they're looking to it through a systemic and institutionally racist prism.
Right.
And so it doesn't matter what it is. It's just be proud of what you've accomplished. And so it was always odd to me whenever I was at these schools. I always felt like I belonged. I knew these people weren't smarter than me. You know what I'm saying?
So for you, it was just like, okay, you know what? I'm going to let you think what you want to think. I know why I'm here.
And then I'm going to beat you in the classroom. So because to me, that's the real standard, is that when they're judging you with tests based off your student ID number, they don't know who you are. So I graduated from Brown University as the valedictorian in my department. I graduated from Harvard Law School cum laude. I graduated from the Harvard Kennedy School with honors. And so there was
I'm just going to show you anyway. I don't have to talk about it.
I'm going to do exactly. You can think all you want about how you think I deserve to get here or not, or whatever, but I can outperform you. And most importantly, I can outwork you.
Right. Well, speaking of which, she actually, it looks like she wasn't able to negotiate the contract she wanted. So it appears that she's actually going to be moving on from ESPN, even though they ended up bumping her up in terms of the slot. She actually may be going to NBC or somewhere else. So, I always say I want to go where I'm celebrated and appreciate it, not tolerate it. So I obviously wish her well. So that was kind of a hot topic that was kind of going on over the next 2 days, which I'm glad you're talking about school, because that's your first main question on the podcast today. Why did you attend law school? What made you attend law school?
I had a roommate at Brown that was adamant about going to law school. And I truly believe that, I'm an environmental determinalist,
Okay.
who you and what you surround yourself with will seep into you.
Okay.
And so I think that his excitement about going to law school sank into my subconscious, and he got me thinking about it. The show L.A. Law was on at the time, and
Was it?
I
Okay.
like Blair Underwood.
Yes, he likes it.
I like Blair. What's so ironic is that Blair came to speak at Harvard Law School because his character on that show was a Harvard Law grad. Fictional.
Why was he Harvard Law?
Because his fictional character was Harvard Law grad.
And you ended up going to Harvard Law.
I went to Harvard Law, met him there.
And I'm going to Harvard.
You're going to Harvard too. I was going to say, are you going to Harvard too, Pierce? You seem to be very smart. I think you'll fit right in.
Yes. And then a few years later, I'm playing. I'm shooting with him, and I did a movie with him and Queen Latifah.
Hey, what are you talking about?
And Cicely Tyson called Mama Flora's Family.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did a show with him called City of Angels with Viola.
Yeah, so it's almost like full circle. Like, I really believe, like you said, kind of what's around you, whether what you're listening to, what you're watching, sometimes it will end up manifesting in a very interesting way. Speaking of school, what was your favorite law school class? What did you do the best at? I don't know.
Well, come on, I graduated cum laude, so I did well in all my.
Yeah. So what did you like?
I really like civil rights and the law. I mean, I really enjoyed those. I took a Native American law class that I thought was very interesting. Civil rights and the law, I thought was really interesting. Professor Charles Ogletree, who's just a legend, was my advisor and my mentor.
Yeah, I don't think I had that class, civil rights law. Didn't have that. Was that elective?
Yeah, it's an elective. It was an elective. So you take it. I think I took it as a third year. Thank you, sir. And it was it was very good. And I love Professor Ogletree. He helped me immensely, and he's just a legend. And I so appreciate him, and I wish him all the best. He's dealing with issues surrounding dementia and things like that. And he's just a wonderful man, wonderful, brilliant mind, and a wonderful professor.
Well, you touched on it at the top of the podcast about being Black in predominantly white institutions. Was there ever a moment while you were in law school that you personally felt discriminated against?
I mean,
it could be from a teacher or student.
I think systemically and institutionally, you always felt that way. I refused to shake my dean's hand when we graduated because of an issue. There was a big group of us that refused to shake hands out of protest because of the issues around Derek Bell and finding a Black woman for tenure. And so there was we were doing a great deal of protesting at the time. Professor Derek Bell was involved in basically saying he was going to resign if a Black woman wasn't brought on as a tenured professor. And the dean at the time was fighting that. There were plenty of qualified Black female candidates to be tenured professors. And we as students were protesting that. Since then, there are more than one. But at that time, there were zero. And so we were fighting that fight. And so institutionally, systemically, certainly on a daily basis. Individually, obviously, you have very heated debates in class about law, policy, equity, justice. And some of those people are on the Supreme Court right now, wow. That I debated with and felt very differently to
differently in terms
clearly,
of
and
views.
clearly I feel differently than the way they view the world now. So the more, you could you can take the person out of the law classroom, but you can't take bad ideas out of their head, I guess.
Right. Well, it's funny that you say that, because someone, I don't know how much you're on Twitter, but you should, if you're on Twitter a lot, you should follow the hashtag Law Twitter and Black Law Twitter. Those hashtags are very interesting conversations, especially obviously the Black Law Twitter with those of us that have gone to law school. And there was a tweet saying, I can't even remember how many women professors I had, but even I can't even remember how many Black women professors. And I'm now a professor at Pepperdine, and I didn't really think about it until I saw that tweet. I said, I didn't have any, Black women law professors. And it's so funny. At the time, it didn't bother me, because I just thought that was the way it is. But now, many years later, when I look back on it, that bothers me, that now, I didn't have one Black law professor.
I'm going to interview you now. So as a Black female professor at a predominantly white institution, how do you get challenged by white students and white male students? And you think some measure of either gender or race-based bias?
Well, I'll say my students, they all are like, oh, you look so young, there's no way you can be the professor. So they think I'm their friend, right? Generally speaking, they think I'm their friend, but I'm very tough. Fair, but very tough. But I'll never forget, and obviously I don't know who the student was, because the reviews are blind, right? When you do reviews on professors. But there's a student going on and on, like, oh, I didn't like this about the class, and I thought that it was way too much reading for a 2 credit. And there were just some other comments in there that, to me, obviously I can't prove it, but if I was a white male professor, he wouldn't have left those type of reviews. So like you said, a lot of times it's not very overt. It can be undercover, what you're feeling and experiencing. But so far, I've actually had a great time at Pepperdine. I teach mostly intellectual property licensing courses, so the fun stuff. I thankfully so far haven't really experienced it, but that was kind of one time I could kind of sense in the review that, again, if I was a white professor, he probably wouldn't have left that comment. It's like, you're at law school, you're complaining about reading. Get out of here. Get out of here.
Exactly. I totally agree. And that's a beautiful campus. So
It is one of the reasons why I love it so much. You were at Harvard. Everybody knows that you obviously met President Barack Obama. Tell us quickly, how did you meet him? What was your first encounter?
Our first encounter was on the basketball court. There's a basketball court, indoor basketball court gym at Harvard Law School that's just on the Harvard Law School campus, and went there to play, and he was there, and so, no one else was in the gym, and I said, hey man, you want to play? And he says, you want to play some basketball? And he said, well, why else would I be in the gym? And and I looked up to him, not just because he's taller than me. I looked up to him, but he had a sense of purpose, gravitas. He was, he's almost 30 years old, and I was in my early 20s, coming right out of undergrad. He had taken almost 7 years off in between undergrad and grad school, 6 years, I think. And, he was a community organizer in Chicago in between Columbia and going to Harvard. So just got to meet him, and we just, we were colleagues. Clearly we had similar interests in terms of wanting to see the condition for our community improve and Black folks. One of the most unique stories, I would say, from the law school days was that, I was very proud that he was the first sitting president to visit a prison, because I took him to visit his first prison during law school. I set up a basketball game. I led the Black student outreach for Balsa, and a brother who was in prison and I had been talking, and I set up a basketball game between Harvard law students and brothers at the maximum security prison.
Wow.
As an outreach thing.
Who won?
They won. Barely. Barack tells a funny story. He said, yeah, I was doing real well until I asked the brother who was guarding me what he was in for. He said double murder. He said, I stopped shooting.
Like, I
But
don't want the smoke. I don't want none of that
no,
smoke.
hey,
Okay.
listen, we tried to win, and it was close. It was very close, and we almost won.
Okay.
But because I took some good players, but Rangers basketball game, and we all went to this prison and went inside and played, and it's an interesting memory, and then to go full circle, to have a sitting president who visits a prison. I think that's wasn't the first time, his first time in a prison. It's very, I think, a beautiful thing, and you can see how the connective tissue works there.
Right. So speaking of which, I mean, we have, obviously you would know that later on he would become the first Black, sitting president. And then, you look at the legal profession, right? So usually, male dominated industries are, usually white, male dominated, whether it be legal, medical, the presidency, things of that nature. The legal profession is currently less than 5% Black. With women, it's 2.5, right? So there's not a lot of us. And sometimes I think I'm like, but I feel like I know so many Black lawyers, but I think it's just the community that I'm in. If you look at the United States, it's really not that many of us. How do you think we can grow the legal profession with more Black attorneys?
I think it really comes down to this, and a lot of folks don't like hearing this. We, as Black folks who are, whether you're an attorney, whether you're a doctor, whatever, you have to be more visible. You have to be more visible. You have to go into the community, go to these schools, go to high schools, go to middle schools, speak in front of classrooms, let people know you exist. Give you an example. I had a debate about this with Ken Chenault, the former CEO and chairman of Amex, who's another Harvard grad, and he's somebody that I would use in many of my speeches when way back in the day. But I said, did you know that there's a man who you could, because a lot of the young brothers would love rappers, right? And this is back before the rappers were becoming billionaires. But they love rappers. And I say, did you know there's a man who's working that you probably never heard of, that you could add up the balance sheet of every rapper living or dead, and they wouldn't match his stock holdings and balance sheet? And they're like, no, come on. I know, he's a Black man. Exactly. His name's Ken Chenault. Okay. And then Ken and I talked. I said, Ken, how could young brothers and sisters aspire to be you if they don't even know you exist? And he's like, well, my board at Amex, they don't necessarily want to see me out at rallies and things. And I said, well, that's a personal decision you have to make about what type of impact you want to have. And that's what I mean. It's hard doing the work that Black lawyers have to do. It's hard putting up with all of the things that females and women lawyers have to put up with, all of those things. But institutionally and systemically, if we're going to break it, we have to get into and out into the community and let folks know there's a pathway for them, and let them see you, let them experience you, let them be impressed by you. And so scheduling at least 2 to 3 times that you go to high schools and just speak in classrooms. Same with middle schools, same with elementary schools. Just do it. There are a numerous number.
Like you said, visibility when it comes to representation, visibility definitely matters. And I think
visibility absolutely matters. And people, either because of their own fears or their own biases, discount that, and they don't do the work. Meaning, you're not going to get such and such high school teacher searching you out, calling you, saying, hey, I just read about you on LinkedIn. Will you come speak to my class? You have to reach out to them. That's part of the work. People aren't going to just show up and say, will you please be my mentor? Hi. Right. No, it's on us to reach out. So all that's to say, I hope anyone listening to this or watching this starts leaning in a way that can be meaningful, so that folks see you much more, because you are magnificent, you are brilliant, you deserve to be seen, you need to be seen, and folks need to know you exist to be you.
Well, speaking of which, what is your advice? So obviously you went to law school, you got all these advanced degrees, and then you come out and say, I'm going to become an actor, I'm going to become an entrepreneur. You didn't take the path of necessarily practicing the law, but I do like that your legal background always tends to cross paths with some of the other things that you're doing. So what do you say to someone that's like that? Maybe they're finishing up law school. Maybe they don't want to take the bar, but they maybe want to use their legal background in a different way. What is the best advice for someone that's not going to practice?
Well, I'll tell you this. I think that the biggest mistake we make about education in general is telling young people and anybody who's studying something, study this so you can do that. That is a mistake. Education is supposed to expand optionality, not limit it. Just because you have a law degree, it's law, but you can still use all of the critical thinking skill set that with it comes with that. I studied archaeology. I'm not an archaeologist, but I love it. It's so interesting. It makes me a better human. It makes me a more learned person. And so all that's to say, follow your heart, follow your passion, and it's so hard to do, but please don't allow yourself to get caught with the golden handcuffs. It's so easy in the legal profession, in any profession, to take a job. You kind of justify it by saying, well, I have student loans to pay back, so I'm going to take this legal job, even though it's not what I want to do. If you're making any decision solely based off money, money can be a factor that you factor in to the decision making. But if you're making that decision solely based off money, it is the wrong decision, period.
Well, speaking of which, you have something new, right, that everyone is talking about, the Black Wall Street platform.
Yes.
I think it's wonderful that you are bringing financial literacy into the fold of all the various things that you're doing. And I know you were in Tulsa last month. Can you tell our viewers a little bit more about that and how they can get involved? And
yeah, so the Black Wall Street digital wallet and exchange has been launched. It's both on Apple and iOS. So whether you're an Android user or an iPhone user, please go in and remember to type "the" in when you go into the Play Store or the App Store. Type "the Black Wall Street" and it'll pop up and you download it. It's kind of like this golden sun with an arrow in it. You download that, and then hopefully you'll want to go through all the KYC process. It's a little bit of a hassle, but you put in your information, a picture, and all this stuff, connect your bank account, and then you can start purchasing Bitcoin on the platform. You can also watch all of these financial literacy videos that we'll be adding to all of the time. And why is this critical? We need to get our community out of cash. 90% of the assets that are being held by our community right now, in terms of our portfolio, is cash. We need to get our community out of cash and into ascending value asset classes that, for the most part, have historically, there have been massive systemic and institutionally racist barriers to entry. So we're talking about the highest value real estate, whether it's stock funds, whether it's fine art purchasing and other things like that that are considered ascending value asset classes. Why is this so important? It's so important because the purchasing power of the dollar is declining so quickly that if we stay in cash, we're going to continue to get poorer and poorer. That's why all of us know people who work in 3 jobs but still barely making ends meet. It's that the pay for that the living wage hasn't kept up with the declining purchasing power of the dollar or inflation, if that's the words you want to use. And so we have to get out of cash. And this platform is a key platform. The wallet is just the beginning. We want a whole ecosystem of linking Black businesses and creating money flows and capital flows. A dollar leaves the Black community right now within 6 to 7 seconds. If we don't own our own digital wallets in the future, it's going to leave within 6 to 7 hours now. And if we don't own our own wallets, it'll leave within 6 to 7 seconds. That's why I launched with the wallet, but it's an ecosystem of recirculating the dollar, just like the original Black Wall Street, Greenwood District, brick and mortar. We need to recirculate our dollar and particularly recirculate our digital and crypto dollar.
Well, our audience will definitely look out for that. Financial literacy, obviously this is the Black Lawyers podcast, and we're empowering people through the law, but also financially. I mean, it just goes hand in hand. So I was really happy to get you on to speak about that. So we're going to make sure our viewers know about it.
Please download the app and give us feedback. This is, I built this technology. So many people told me, hey, Hill, white label a wallet, don't. And I said, how can I go into my community and talk about us owning our own IP, owning our own technology? If I go and you pull back the onion and say, well, Hill doesn't even own this technology. We own the technology. We built it from scratch and we're improving it. We're in beta. Please download the wallet, The Black Wall Street, and then just give us feedback. How can and what should we do to improve it? What features would you like to see? So as the ecosystem grows, everybody's a part of helping us build it and make it better.
And with that said, I want to close out with the Black Excellence moment for the week. So the Black Excellent moment of the week, I'm sure you knew all the controversy surrounding Sha'Carri Richardson and how they have this very outdated Olympian rule as it relates to marijuana and other substances. And, they ultimately did not pick her for the relay, but she just landed a contract with Beats, Dr. Dre, and along with Kanye West. So her commercial actually aired during the finals. So talk about, taking lemons and turning them into lemonade. I think it's a really good example of this is why you have to change the rules. Because if it's the rule, it's the rule. And I think the laws, how they just apply to us typically, it tends to discriminate against us more. Let's just put it that way.
Well, simply put, obviously that's a misguided rule. It needs to change. But even beyond that, since there was some optionality, I didn't understand the logic of how
it didn't enhance her ability to run.
Yeah. Well, certainly didn't enhance her ability to run. We know that. Right. Beyond that, I don't understand the logic of leaving her off, because there was the option to put her on the relay. And to me, she would have been on the relay anyway, because she would have had the option as the fastest in the 100 to be on that relay. So it's not like she would have been taking someone's place on the relay. Now, there is an argument to say, hey, they could have brought, a person who was an alternate would not be an alternate anymore. And obviously that would be sad. Right. So it's an interesting thing. She's definitely earned, and I'm just happy to see that she's going to have a long career. And I think,
and she says she's young. She'll just run in another 3 years. She's just kind of like, listen, I came out, I was transparent with what happened, what I did. I'm just looking forward to the next Olympics, and at the rate we're going, they may be closing it down again because of COVID. So it may not.
Yeah. Well, and please, y'all out there, please let folks know about getting vaccinated. Our community needs to definitely understand how important it is. And a lot of folks, we get why there's vaccination hesitancy, but let's lean in on that and get that done for our health of our community and folks.
Well, I think that's a great way to end the interview, because like you said, COVID is still out here. So yes, definitely get vaccinated. And we're just so happy you were able to join the Black Warriors podcast. I could tap to you all day, but your office is going to kill me if I don't let you go.
We'll come back. I'll come back.
Yeah, we'll definitely do a part
two. We'll do a part two.
There are a couple of cases that are coming up. I represent Ahmaud Arbery's estate with all the IP, but we have the civil and the criminal stuff going on in the fall. So yeah, we'll definitely have you back with a part two. And we're just so happy to have you here at the Black Warrior podcast, where we're rooting for everyone Black. And with that said, thank you so much.
Great job.
All right.
Great work.
Thank you. Take care. No problem. Bye-bye.